great. Guys, thank you for joining us for another session with the Good Food community. We are all about connecting the dots between human health, the food that we're eating, and the way that our food is produced, and linking that back to the soil. And Andre, we are just so stoked to be talking to you today because you sort of embody all of these principles really from start to finish. So Andre is from Bramleigh Farm, which is in the Midlands, near Nottingham Road, if you know the Midlands. And this couple are nothing short of legendary because you do so many things on your farm. So Andre, I'm going to just hand over to you. Can you just say hello, tell us who you are, and just tell us a bit about Bramleigh Farm. Tell us about what you do.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for hosting me, and it's a pleasure to be with you guys. I really think what you guys are doing is awesome, and I look forward to seeing how it grows. So yes, Bramleigh Farm, like you said, we've been on the go for this would probably be around our sixth season that we're farming. So our farm started very small, like a startup, small business, and we initially we started with a lot of different things just to see what would work for us, what works in our context, and also what we enjoyed doing, how we like to farm, that sort of thing, whether we prefer more livestock, whether we prefer more growing crops and things like that. So yeah, it's been an evolution, a constantly evolving system that we're building, and yeah, here we are, 2024. I'm surprised we're still going.
Amazing. Okay, so just because there'll be some people listening here who don't know exactly what it is that you produce. So you do, just correct me if I'm wrong, but you do grass-fed or grass-raised, grass-finished beef. You do pasture-raised eggs, pasture-raised chicken. You do goat milk products, not actual goat meat, from what I can tell, just goat's milk products. You do sourdough bread. I know that. I just got your message on the Rico group, so it's a good reminder. and what have we missed? There's tallow. You do whipped tallow balm, tallow products, beeswax products. What have I missed?
Yeah, no, you pretty much listed it all there. So we primarily focusing now on grass-fed beef and pasture-raised eggs. And then the chicken, pork, and the goat milk dairy stuff is more of a sideline enterprises, but they all work together, and that's kind of the idea with a sort of holistic farming style, is that each enterprise kind of ties in with another, and that you can run multiple enterprises on the same piece of land without having to necessarily do monocrop or specialized type of farming. So yeah, when we started, we were just growing. We had a market garden, microgreens, and sourdough, because that's pretty much all we could afford to set up, and it was something we could do year round. And so the sourdough is a sort of enterprise that's kind of just stuck around because it was there from the beginning. It's still something that we can produce every week, and we know it can be consistent. It's literally the one thing that we can do consistently. Everything else is very seasonal. It's very up and down, and that's just a symptom of small scale, unfortunately. So yeah, in time we might reduce our product line a little bit more, just to make sure we can specialize on the things that we're doing, and really make it a high quality product. But for now, this is what's working for us, and we making a living, and so that's where we are.
That's great. It certainly seems like you went into this for like you didn't have like big money, millions retiring on, thousands, millions and millions in mind when you went into this, it seems to me. I mean, obviously profits are a bonus, but it doesn't seem to me like you went into this business for that reason primarily. But what I wanted to just go back to, Andre, is have you always been a farmer?
No, no.
Yeah. Tell us that story, because that's a good story about how you got into this.
And what
Yeah,
you were
so
doing before.
we didn't like this was not on my radar at all, to become a farmer, but I studied sound engineering, music production, so I was in that space. Then I went into sort of telecommunications and working in with wireless internet and that sort of thing. And I actually got more through that. I got involved into solar power, renewable energy, because a lot of the sites that we were working on were very remote, and so there was no option but to use alternative forms of energy, and that really piqued my interest. So I studied and trained in renewable energy and designing solar power systems, and then I got thinking about what other ways can we be self-sufficient. If we can be self-sufficient in our energy usage, wouldn't it be great if we were self-sufficient from food, water, everything else? So that was the initial, the romantic dream that sparked the whole thing. And self-sufficiency, yes, self-sufficiency, I think is a very good goal to have. But the other thing that came into it was our health at the same time. So working in both Kate, my wife, and I were working full time. Both our health was okay, but we were not the healthiest. And at the time, we started looking at what can we eat and where can we find better sources of food, and it wasn't that easy to find. And the timing of it was such that around those same years, this property that we're on now, which belongs to my family, became available, and it was offered to us to take on, basically on the condition that we can run a business on the property, but we would be on our own, and good luck, pretty much, which is great. I mean, that has helped us a lot to have a piece of land and not having to pay repayments on debt of owning land, that sort of thing. That's helped a lot in our business. But in the early years, it's kind of, the way I can describe it is, if someone gives you a V8 Land Cruiser as a gift, that's a really nice gift to have. But as a sort of as a youngster, young family, you can't afford to run that vehicle. You can't even afford to fill up the tank of petrol in that car. So it takes a number of years before you get to a stage where you can actually appreciate and use that vehicle for what it is. So that was a blessing and a very, very high burden on us in the initial years, because we didn't know how expensive it is to just maintain a property, let alone lay a farm business on top of it. Just to keep it going month to month was a challenge. Anyway, so those two things coincided: the exploration into self-sufficiency, how to source clean, ethical, and nutrient-dense food, and then trying to combine that with a property that was available, and how we could use that as best as possible to generate an income for the property, as well as a surplus for us to both work full time on the farm.
How big is your farm, Andre?
We on 200 hectares. which is, it's not 200 hectares of arable land. It's about 60 hectares of it is indigenous bush, which is just natural beauty and provides us with pretty much all the water that we need. And the rest of that is basically steep mountain, rocky slopes, and a bit of grass veld for grazing, and about 7 hectares of pasture.
Okay, so you're using about 7 hectares would be what you're using for the animals and for your meat and dairy business.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Yeah, we were talking about it earlier. We with your accommodation, it's also great to have for people to come in and have a walk on the farm and see what's going on. And do you guys have families that come over and bring their children and get involved in? I mean, you don't want them getting too involved in the day-to-day activities, but it's quite novel to do you do that kind of agritourism kind of vibe?
Yes. Yeah, we love that part of it, actually. So that's kind of the biggest change over the last few years, is that instead of trying to do everything on a farm business scale, we've realized that we can do some things on a farm scale, and we've reduced some things to more of a homesteading scale. So with the pigs, for example, we had 50 odd pigs at one stage. Now we have 2. So that's scaling those things down to make it more appropriate for us. But what it's done for us is that we've been able to build a sort of the homestead enterprises around where our accommodation, our family cottage is, so that when people come there, really get the sort of full farm experience, where they look out the one window and there's goats, kids running around. The other side is where we milk the goats. The other side is where we've got some layers and a chicken coop, and then the pigs right next to that. So that works really well. And that's something we're going to keep developing as well, because that's the kind of place we would go and stay at. And whenever we travel, we're like, that's the place we just go to other farms where we can actually be on another farm. So maybe that's something that people will enjoy as well. I'm sure there's others like us and like you that would attract. But it all forms part of the farm enterprise as a whole. Sometimes people want to separate and say, well, how much of your farm is the actual production, the beef, the eggs, and how much are you getting from the accommodation? And it's like, well, to us, it's one and the same. It's the farm. It's working as a whole. It's a system. So, yeah.
One of the questions I had for you, actually, Andre, was I guess you just answered it really, is like, is there a particular area of the way that you farm that is more profitable than the other? I mean, I guess because you're focusing on the beef and poultry more, that sort of alludes to the fact that maybe the pigs were not quite as rewarding on the profitability side of things. I'm wondering like, what are the more profitable ways to do this? I guess for other people who are wondering, how they can maybe sort of emulate what you guys are doing, how can you cut some corners for them so that they, can like learn quicker, not have to learn the hard way?
Yes. So profitability is one of the variables that comes into it, but the most profitable thing that we've had on the farm was growing microgreens, like per square meter. That's the most highest margin enterprise that you can do. And then after that, it would be things like beekeeping, growing mushrooms. But pretty much none of those things we do anymore. The reason is what markets we have access to, what our context is in terms of geographically, what our farm is sort of ideal for, and then and thirdly, how we also want to live. For example, with microgreens, it's a very intensive system that you have to do something every single day so that you can stagger the production and have it consistent in that sort of way. And if you miss a day or leave something for a day too long or too short, you lose your whole crop. So timing is very important on that. So it ties you down and doesn't give you a lot of flexibility in your personal life. Sure, you can automate those things and bring in extra labor if you want to, but for us, we started with our farm and looked at that what's ideal in the terrain, what would naturally be growing well here, and the answer is pretty much small herbivores thrive in our environment. So that would have traditionally been springbok and impala, all the way through up to eland, which sometimes still graze through our valley and things like that, Arabi. And so that's why we were sort of like, okay, that in our context would be goats and cattle fit that criteria. And we use primarily Angus cattle, which are a lot smaller in terms of their frame. So big, a big cow, big breed wouldn't suit our context just because of the slopes and the terrain. The profitability with the pigs, it's a trick. There's no one way to say this is profitable and that's not, unfortunately. For us, the pigs were actually quite profitable, and that made it even harder to decide to scale it down. We had access to waste milk from two of our neighbors, because we sandwiched right between two big dairy farms, which was ideal for feeding pigs. They were completely grain free. They were basically living on forage, milk, and our kitchen scraps. So in terms of production cost, it was very low and profitable. But what we didn't have is a good processing facility close to us. We tried multiple different abattoirs, and none of them were really up to scratch at any stretch of the imagination. And so, yeah, we harvested a few on farm. That's also a lot harder to do with pigs than with cattle, for example. So all those factors played into it, and we're very happy that we decided for now. It's something, again, you can build up as time goes on. The pigs had also done the work that they were here to do. Every animal that we have has to have its role and do the work that it's here to do. The agreement we have with our animals is that we'll make sure we bring you food and bring you water and give you the best life possible, but you also have to do your part. So the pigs were here to bramble and other small shrubs, which they pretty much had finished, and we had run out of bramble for them to clear. So it was time for them for that enterprise to slow down, and for now.
And those areas, sorry, the areas where they worked, has the bramble come back, and how's the you would call it, like you're working on remediation, so how's the soil progressing, and what are you seeing now on those areas?
Yeah, so it's hard because we show people what it looked like before, and they don't believe us because none of the brambles come back. The pigs are so effective because they go through and they actually dig up the root and eat the root of the bramble, which is quite tasty and nutritious for them. So one sort of pass, one application with the pigs will get rid of the bramble problem completely. Whereas if you were to use a chemical, you would have to spray it multiple times at a specific time of the year and then you'd eventually get some kind of effect. But you know, it's much slower, much costlier, and much wasteful, because a lot of that chemical ends up not getting onto the plant and just washing off. So yeah, we pretty much most of the 7 hectares, which is now our pasture space for our layers, was all bramble. We had a lot of work to do there to get it back to grassland, basically. So and the pigs were the number one tool for that. You know, we could have also employed a big tractor and just plowed the whole thing. There would have still been some regrowth, because you'll never actually pull those roots out. You're just turning those roots back in.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've advised a lot of people. Actually, our pigs now, it's not like we sold them or harvested all of them. They actually moved down the road to a farmer who had the exact same problem as us. He does large scale crop production, and in between his fields there's just pockets of brambles. So in speaking to him, I said, well, don't you want to try the pigs? So that's where they are at the moment. So that's nice to have them close by as well if we ever want to go visit them.
They're the Bramble Brigade. And you can't eat a tractor, so it's like a win-win. And tractors cost a lot of petrol. So
yes.
That's cool. I would be curious to see the pastures that the pigs have been like before and after. That's a cool, I love that stuff.
I wanted to, I was on your blog. I love your website, because you guys have just shared so much on your website and on your social platforms. And I think your most recent article, actually I'll leave that one for now, but I want to just go back a little bit to your butchering woes. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because people don't realize the butcher part of the link. People understand that animals are raised, but then you kind of think that the butchering thing is just kind of a standard procedure, and then it just lands up on the shelf, and but that's been a major stumbling block for you guys out. And just reading some of your blog, I know you were excited at one point about something coming out to the farm to actually euthanize animals, and then the cost implications of that. So I guess what I want to know is what is your process now? Who are you using now? And again, how can you cut corners for someone who is wanting to come at this regenerative farming thing, the way kind of similar to you guys, and perhaps wanting to take a more ethical approach, but also wanting to cut down on the packaging, because they're coming from a sort of, environmental standpoint, a carbon footprint as well, so that there's not so much traveling, animal stresses, there's all these things that come into play with processing meat. So yeah, what can you tell us on that point of view?
That's a really good question, a good point to bring up. I would say, in terms of producing something on the farm, whether it's an egg or a steak or anything, a bunch of carrots, 40% of that work of actually producing that end product is what you see actually happening on the farm. But 60% is actually what's happening on the processing, the marketing, the distribution, and transportation side. So yeah, we've had a lot of challenges. We've tried a lot of different things, because we are trying to just iterate, and it's frustrating. I can understand for a lot of customers, as frustrating it is for us to have worked so hard with an animal to raise it as best as possible and as ethically as we can, to then get it back from the butcher and the packaging has been badly done, and it's just very disappointing. From a customer point of view, they've walked with us down this road of, our first pork sausages were never going to be our best. it's a constant process of, okay, let's try this, and iterate. And people expect that the first thing you produce is going to automatically be the best thing that you ever produce. But we're only now, 6 years into it, producing the best steaks, the best sausages that we're doing, because like any product, iPhone 1 to iPhone 16, it's been a constant process of iteration. No one realistically expected the first iPhone to have the capabilities of the iPhone 16. So that's the first comparison I want to draw. Secondly, we had to find the balance between what the market can accept in terms of consistency and scale. You can't start and go straight to a retailer, Pick and Pay, Checkers or whatever, and be able to supply them, because there's no way, unless if you're a small farm growing, bootstrapping, there's no way you can reach that kind of scale overnight. So what do you do in between? There isn't really a market for any inconsistent productions. Spar doesn't want us to deliver 10 dozen eggs this week and then 0 eggs for 2 weeks, and then again they need that consistency. So from a butchering point of view, that puts us in a bit of a tight spot, where we have to find a way to do what we think is the best for the animal, because we tried loading them, driving them to an abattoir, and that whole experience was not pleasant for us and for the animal. The stress of the transport, the stress of the offloading at the facility, and it's just not a way you want to end an animal's life, and we're here to honor that animal, and to like Joel Salatin says, one bad day. That's the idea. And so what do we do? So we went to using a private butcher that comes to the farm, kills the animal on the farm, then takes the animal, loads it, takes it to his private facility, where he would do the dressing of the animal, which would either be skinning and eviscerating, taking the organs out, then breaking it down straight away. If it was a pig, it would be broken down and cut straight away, cut and packed. For our beef animals, they need to hang for at least 2 weeks. We do 14 days minimum dry aging. So the private butcher also has to have the facility to hang those carcasses for 2 weeks. Now, technically, we are not allowed to resell that meat. You're allowed to do that on a private basis, privately contract a butcher to come in, privately pay him to do our butchering for us, and then that meat is then for our own consumption. We're not allowed to then resell that product. But we're willing to take that step. We're willing to be fined if that happens. But first of all, it's not financially viable for us to load one animal at a time to drive it an hour and a half to the abattoir. So, and secondly, we know that our butcher has a registered facility. He gets regularly inspected by Food, Health and Safety. So from that point of view, and having personally visited multiple abattoirs and seen the hygiene at those facilities, I know that our meat is 100 times cleaner and hygienic. The whole process from start to finish is so much more hygienic. So I'm willing to take that risk because that's what I want to feed my family, and that's what our customers also know, because we're transparent about our production methods, and so be it. You have to draw a line and take a stand somewhere and say no, that's not going to work for us, and I'm sorry. In terms of cutting corners for someone trying to do this for themselves, the most cost-effective way is to use a private butcher, and basically buying or trying to divide up an animal in bulk. So if you can get a few people together, maybe 4 or 5 families, and everybody gets exactly a quarter or a fifth of whatever comes out, whether it's, a fifth of the steaks, a fifth of the bones of everything. That way you can also package in bulk. It doesn't need to be presentable. We try to make our product as presentable as possible, because it has to have a label and then go be shipped to someone maybe in Joburg who's ordered from us for the first time, and it needs to look at least at the sort of first impression needs to be presentable. But all of that can fall away if it's just, if you're trying to just get the cheapest beef you want. Yes.
Okay, that's cool. And packaging wise, it looks like you guys try to sort of take a more eco-friendly approach, and it did not work. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yes. So yeah, that's one of the things that that didn't work so well in the beginning. We try to cut out as much of the packaging as possible. Again, this was a market sort of consumer-driven thing that we were trying to marry with our small scale production, is that we were selling at smaller markets and farmers markets and things like that, where people are talking to you face to face, and they would often say, could we do it without a polystyrene punnet or without the plastic or something like that? So we did a lot of research and a lot of work trying to find different types of packaging that would work and still be cost effective. Initially, we just tried whatever we could get, but it ended up being very expensive. And then the same people that wanted the packaging refused to buy it because then the price was too high. So we could sort of met we met them where they wanted to be, but then it didn't meet their price point, which is fair enough. I can understand that. So we've sort of tried to backtrack a little bit and find a middle ground. We're still trying to reduce as much of the polystyrene as possible, get rid of cling wrap as much as possible. But yeah, the reality is the best. We produce high quality artisanal products. That's what it comes down to. Nothing we do is mass production. So, and our sales are not high enough that we can sell everything fresh. Fresh would make a difference with the packaging as well, but we can't. So everything we do is frozen immediately after we get it back from the butcher. And if you freeze meat, it needs to be in a vacuum sealed plastic pack. And unfortunately, that's our limitations. If you wanna have that product, preserve it, freeze it, and then take it home and put it in your freezer. It needs to stay in a way. We can't put it in a brown paper bag and risk contamination of the product and people getting sick.
I think everything you're saying just kind of reiterates to me that, like, you guys have gone into this with heart. You really do take into consideration all the elements. You're trying to balance impeccable food quality, which like I know from talking to you and just just from just reading your stuff online, that like food quality, the quality of the product like comes first, and then you're trying to balance all the other elements like the the environmental impacts, the stress, trying to work with local businesses, price point, for customers. And I think you guys do such a great job at just like continually communicating with the people who love buying the products. And and just communicating what you're doing on your platform. So I just want to salute you. You guys are doing great.
I think what's reassuring for me, because I buy a lot of your stuff, Andre, is that I know you guys, and there's like I trust you guys. Like there's when I go, if I'm on holiday and I have to go buy from a place, and I'm taking meat specifically from the shelf, I don't know where it's coming from, and I don't know what those animals ate, or how they were treated, or what the soil's looking like. And you guys are focusing on all those aspects. And, like obviously there's a lot of meat out there to buy, but when it comes to your guys' product, because I know also that you guys are focusing on your diets of your animals, I know that they are not being fed foreign things, as things that are not naturally meant for animals to eat, which is very important for me, because then I know it's going to come into my body. So yeah, that's how we should. It would be great if it wasn't an ideal. It would be great if it was accessible to many people. Nutrition shouldn't be a lifestyle choice. It should just be accessible to everybody.
Andre, you obviously are juggling a lot. I mean, most farmers don't have to consider things like packaging. And I think obviously your background, not being a farmer to begin with, has been invaluable in that. So obviously there's a lot of skepticism about regenerative agriculture in the industry. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts on what advice would you give to perhaps large-scale farmers in terms of steps they can take to slowly start decommoditizing themselves, so to speak?
Sure. Yeah. So I think Andrew Oddington puts it sums it up very well. He basically, conventional agriculture argues that we need to produce in an unsustainable way in order to be sustainable long term, sustain population and food supply and food security and everything. And therefore we have to continue with unsustainable methods. And that just doesn't pass any logic test, really. And if you put it that way, most people would agree. So I would say to large scale farmers that it's easier, I think, once you're an established farmer, to look at ways that you can slowly introduce back natural systems, natural cycles. And I think I honestly believe most farmers actually love their land and love what they do. They love their animals, they love their soil, and they want the best for their farm. So it doesn't take a lot to convince them to that with some small adjustments here and there over time, they can revitalize and really have their properties, their farms, in a way that's really thriving. Because I think that's at truly deep down in every farmer's heart. That's what they love to see. The challenge is not to get caught up with the newest technology and the fanciest no-till planters. There's a lot of pressure from the conventional industry now, the manufacturers that make the tractors, the machines, the implements, the planters, to kind of jump on the bandwagon of regenerative ag, and they've kind of gotten to a point where there's only so many innovations they can do on their newest plow every year. So they're looking for something new to jump on and being like, this is the latest high tech planter that you could use for this planting cover crops or whatever you want to do. But actually behind the scenes, all it is them just trying to keep up with growth and keep their sales going. So if you're a crop farmer, I would say start integrating livestock, and just trying to find a rotation where your land is fallow in between plantings or something. Put something, a mix of species in there that you can graze with cattle, sheep, goats, or a mix of all of the above. If you're a livestock farmer, I'd say look at planting more diversity in your pastures. If you can introduce 2 new species this year and then another 2 or another 4 next year and so on, pretty soon you're up to 20, 26, 30 different species in your pastures, and the soil microbes are just going to flourish and thrive under those conditions. So and that's not anything too crazy for either one of them. If you're used to, and you've got crops and fields established, you'll have water there. If you've got water there, you can bring livestock in, and vice versa. So that's really the lowest barrier to entry, and it's about bringing more life onto your farm, not necessarily more machines, more steel and things. It's about more living creatures.
And speaking of soil microbes, what are the biggest changes you've seen on your farm in terms of soil health and the change perhaps in pasture? Or would you say most of it is down to the way that you manage your livestock and the variety of livestock that you have on your farm?
I'm laughing because I wish Natalie was here, but she helped us initially in the beginning. She did a lot of soil testing for us to test for the ratio of good to bad microbes, and we probably haven't done a soil test for over a year now. We simply trying to observe what's happening on top of the surface and letting us sort of being guided by that for the meantime. This kind of coincided with us needing and having our firstborn child. That also derailed systems a little bit. But what coincided with rearranging our farm enterprises and how we do things is we had to just run with what we're doing for a couple of years and just observe things and step away a little bit from the diversity, reducing the amount of enterprises that we're doing, reducing the sort of criteria and goals that we're setting for ourselves in terms of soil health that we wanted to meet, because it was becoming a bit overwhelming for us to try and get every step of the process absolutely spot on. And like you say, it becomes too much to manage at a point. And even now, we've got three full-time employees and myself and my wife. So it's a team of 5, and we're running the farm full-time. So our business was suffering economically because we were too preoccupied with the changes in our soils, changes in our water retention, and measuring, for example, nutrient density levels in our eggs, which we could be doing, comparing our eggs to conventional eggs and that sort of thing. So yeah, those are all costs that we as a small business couldn't afford, and we're only now getting back to the stage where we can start doing those testing things again. All I could say to you is what's happened above the ground gives us a very good indicator of what's happening below the ground. We have areas on our farm that used to just hold water, and there was no drainage, and now, since we've run pigs through there and we've let grass grow without burning it, deeper roots means that area doesn't retain water. I mean, it retains water, but now it's in the soil. It's not just sitting like a pan on top. We're seeing increases in our grass species, species that are coming back that weren't there before, that have sort of self-seeded themselves, and then just the mulch on top of the soil has grown, because what again used to be burned, we either now just graze or graze and mow depending on the time of year. So anywhere you go now, there'll be a layer of mulch in between, if you can find a sort of bare patch of soil in between, and all of that, I know I can just dig to a sort of 10 centimeter depth, and I know I'm going to find a lot of life in that soil. Sorry, Natalie.
No, that's amazing though. The thing is, these observations are often difficult to measure. There aren't really tests that can prove what we're seeing before our eyes. So observations are, they tell us a lot. So that's important. That's amazing to hear.
No, just to other small farmers, you do have to kind of choose your battles and remember that your farm is a lifetime project. We came to this sort of realization a few years ago that we're never going to fully develop our farm the way we want to in our lifetimes, and pretty much your farm will never be fully developed. Even if you leave it for 2, 3, 4 generations, there's always something more that you can change or develop, add another enterprise here and there. So we've made peace with the fact that we're going to this is a long-term project that we're not going to get right in the first 5, 10 years even. There's going to be a lot of problems that we're going to hand over to our children that they can sort out when it's their turn, and they will do the same.
Well, you've given them a great place to start from. You've laid the foundations down.
That's the idea.
Just hearing you talk about the future, can you tell us what's ahead in years to come? But layered in that, I want to ask you, if you could go 6 years back, knowing what you know now, would you still be doing what you're doing?
Yes, 100%. This is the foundation I want to build for my family going forward. And Kate and I both agree on that. So if we could get that right, that we can sustain the farm and the business for long enough that we can at least offer our children an entrance point to it, if they want to, if they so choose. They don't have to. They don't have to do everything, but we want to be able to offer them something that they know that they can raise a family and make a living, earn a salary themselves, not just take on work and not be paid for it, not that their time isn't valued. If I had to go looking back, there isn't actually too much I would do differently, because I understand, all the variables that came together and made us make certain decisions at certain times. A lot of it was economic pressure, and that's the main thing I would do is probably start with less initially, and if we started with the same amount of enterprises, I would try and scale them down, like we've discussed, to farm scale and homestead scale sooner. And that just, again, that's just was our sort of, it's also, I suppose, peer pressure from all these overseas farmers that you watch, that you see them doing it, and it looks, so easy and everything. So that makes you want to do everything just like they're doing. But I would say to myself, just, forget about what they're doing and focus on thinking about what suits you and your life and the life that you want to build. And the thing is with any small business goes through this, where you're not profitable, you're not breaking even until you do. There's nothing you can do about it until you get to the point where you're making a profit and you cash flow positive. Every day before that, you're not, and that's okay. And every single day that you're not cash flow positive, you're like, flip, this is not working, this is not working, this is not working, until you get to the day where you do. And then you're like, oh, okay, it can work, and it does work. It just takes time. You have to build, you have to iterate, and you get there eventually. If I could define regenerative agriculture from an economic point of view, it would be to say it's farming with externalizing as little as possible costs as possible. So farming with the least possible externalized costs. So conventional farming externalizes a lot of costs. This is why they can be much cheaper. First of all, scale, economies of scale, yes, that's fine, but they're also externalizing a lot of cost onto the human health that people have to still pay for at some point. Externalizing it to the environment is a big one, because there's no immediate cost to soil erosion, soil degradation, loss of nutrients, mining nutrients out of the soil that you run out of at some point, and then whether it's 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, they might not be around anymore. So they're just externalizing that. So we're trying to and animal welfare. That's like the main one. The animal can't talk, so you can basically externalize all sorts of money saving, cost cutting techniques onto the animal, and they can't really complain about it. And you could just keep them alive long enough until they get to a slaughter age, and on the books financially it looks like you're very profitable, but that's not long-term economically sustainable or sustainable health environmentally. So yeah, that's just what it is. If you internalize all those costs into your production, your product is going to be more expensive. And so we in the battle between where our actual cost of production is, with as much of those costs that we are choosing to burden ourselves and to not externalize those, and the actual price point ceiling, what people are prepared to pay. and constantly finding where that gap is that's called running a business, staying in that place. It is possible, so keep doing it, keep going, and you'll find it.
A big motivating factor for us even just getting together in the first place and talking about these things is this exact conundrum of, yes, you can go to Spar or the supermarket and get your commercially produced meat and veg, but like what you're saying, what is the cost down the line from environmental, from a health perspective, and and just we keep obviously this thing of the cost of the product for for a high quality product. I guess the thing that we're trying to kind of reiterate here as well is to say that just because a product is cheaper doesn't mean that you're going to be full of it. If you buy the equivalent mass in some in a product that's been regeneratively produced and is high quality, you're essentially going to need less of the product that is high quality, because like in the other case, you in many cases sometimes consuming biomass. You're not necessarily fuller. You're not, your health suffers as a consequence, and whether you see it now or later, so I guess what we're trying to sort of enlighten people here is that buying a better quality product is going to save you in health costs one day. You're going to be fuller on less. You're doing a good service to local businesses. You're doing a good service to the environment. So switch to more of these products, and hopefully these conversations will inspire other people who have access to land, who maybe have the possibility of starting these things and going, I can be a part of this community, and that thought kind of brings you back to something I read on your website as well, which was that you went into this from a sort of self-reliance, with hopes and dreams of becoming self-reliant, but then you came to realize that it needs to be more, there needs to be a community reliance. And I think we're all, if Nat is here as well, I think, and Rob's would agree with me too, in that this needs to be a community effort. We've all got to sort of draw on each other's skills, and your skill is producing brilliantly produced produce that is impeccable quality, and it's up to us as the consumers to choose producers like you more and more, and then and for you to inspire other people with your knowledge to start similar setups. So you're doing a good thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think I think that message is getting out there more and more, because people are understanding that the foods they eat on a daily basis are nutrient deficient. So, and we're not even talking about toxicity in foods from routine antibiotics, growth promoters, things like that, or just unclean water that an animal's drinking its entire life, and then you consuming that. So on the one hand, what you're consuming on a daily basis, you sort of low dose poisoning yourself. That's not ideal. So you don't want to low dose poison yourself, but then at the same time, you also don't want to low every day slowly deplete your body of nutrients. I mean, if you're not replacing them at some point, your body is going to fall apart, and that results in just showing itself in chronic disease and things like that. So you need to replenish your body's nutrients, minerals, and you can buy those in supplement form, but your supplements are never as well balanced as how nature puts them together in a plant, in animal protein. So it's actually more convenient just to eat,
real food. Yeah.
A healthy egg or two every day is so much easier than trying to figure out which supplement to buy and always have it at hand, and then you run out, and then then you got to find the shop. Oh, they don't have stock. Then you got to go to another one. It's just easier to have it in your fridge, and whatever you take out your fridge, whether it's the milk, the eggs, the whatever, your salad, you are just keeping your body, your nutrient levels supplied for your family as well. It's children. It's so difficult to know where they're at, because they may be still too small. They can't give you the feedback that you need. So it just gives you the peace of mind to know that whatever they might be eating, first of all, that there's no toxicity in there, and that secondly, that their bodies are getting everything they need to just grow and be healthy.
Okay, Andre, let us know, how can people get in touch with you, and where do they buy your produce?
Okay, so we are primarily direct to consumer business. So we have an online store on our website, bramleigh.co.za, spelled like this, Bramleigh. And we ship nationally now. That's become an option for us because the cost of freight, and we've got access to secondhand cooler boxes, so it means we could ship frozen stuff we've gone to Limpopo, Cape Town, everywhere.
Wow,
that's not a problem for us. We've kind of dialed that in very well. Locally, we're KZN, so we've got local drop-offs that we do weekly to Howick, Hilton, and Durban. So that's also an option. That's free or a much cheaper delivery option. And then the other thing that we do is Rico, which, if people have never heard of Rico, it's basically just an online, whether it's Facebook or WhatsApp group, farmers market. So we've gotten together with a few other local farmers, local producers. Also, their sort of small scale production is not big enough to go into conventional markets, so we can go direct to consumer, which is great. That's where you get your best quality. But if you want to start your own Rico, it's super easy. You just create a WhatsApp group, put all your farmers on there. People we post once a week what we've got available, and then people contact us directly to order, and we all meet in one central place, whether it's a parking lot or a park in town somewhere, and people just arrive for 45 minutes. We have a little pop-up market. Everybody gets their orders, and then we all leave again and carry on. It's very convenient for people because it's every week, so you can sort of plan ahead on a weekly basis, and you're going to get everything you need because you've got the whole variety from meat, eggs, dairy, veg, everything, preserves, honey, and it's very efficient for us as farmers because we know what to plan for. Especially if you're harvesting veg, you can just harvest what you've pre-sold. You're not taking produce out of the ground, taking it to a market, and then it's wasted if it's unsold. And it's quick, so you're not sitting in a farmer's market for half a day or the whole day. It's an hour, 45 minutes that you need to be in one place to deliver all your orders, and then we can go home and carry on, get back to farming, which is what we actually want to do and enjoy.
Yeah, for sure. That is fantastic. Thank you so much for the work you're doing. It's amazing. It's so great that there are people like you out there, especially in our province of KZN. And thanks so much for sharing your time with us. This has been amazing. I'm sure we've all learned a lot. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me and creating a platform where farmers can share their stories. And I can talk about farming all day. So if you can sign off, and I'll just keep talking for another 2 hours. That's fine.
That's fine. Fine by us. We're happy to do that.
Awesome.
Thank you so
to
much.
Spend time with you. Appreciate it.
Great. Thanks, Andre. Cheers.
Okay. Bye. Thank you.